So, where did we leave Joseph? We left Joseph in prison. Joseph is in prison because he has been forgotten. He's been forgotten by someone known as the cupbearer. The cupbearer was the second in command in the Egyptian empire, second in command only to the Pharaoh, the ruler. And the cupbearer has forgotten that Joseph helped him, and so Joseph waits for 2 long years until a time when the Pharaoh has bad dreams. The Pharaoh has bad dreams about 7 cows on the banks of the Nile. The story that we're looking at is in a book called Genesis, which is a collection of stories and songs and poems collected together by the Hebrew people at a time when they really faced chaos and crisis and wanted to remember what their story was. It's part of a big collection of books we call the Bible. At this point, there is a lot of talk about dreams. And it's important to note that when we're talking about dreams in this story, we're not talking about the kind of dreams that come because you didn't quite follow the recipe in a HE assignment you were given online with your family for a project, and you had an upset stomach and you had a strange dream. We're not talking about these kinds of dreams. Instead, this is about visions. This is about messages. This is about things that are being revealed. And this time the dreams are being revealed to the Pharaoh, the ruler of the empire of Egypt. Imagine a situation where you are being troubled by a sense of worry, a sense of dread, having strange things in your mind and dreams that are keeping you awake. Imagine that. What could such an ancient story ever have to say to us in our situation today? One of the energizing things for the Hebrews hearing this story as they faced the crisis that they faced as slaves about 600 years before the time of Jesus of Nazareth, and collecting these stories and hearing them read out together would have been to hear of an empire, a representative of the empire in the Pharaoh, who doesn't get it, who gets the dreams but doesn't get it, because in their situation and their experience, the empire promises and claims so much, but here the empire doesn't get it, and so it's a subversive story. The real dream, the real vision, the real project, the real plan that's in these stories is not the dream of the empire. The empire claims so much. It claims to have power, it claims to give meaning and truth, it claims to offer happiness and welfare, it claims to threaten with power, it claims to tempt and seduce people to be part of its way of thinking, but it doesn't get the reality, because the dream actually exists in the heart and in the mind of God, the Creator. And that's the dream that this story is all about. It's not an accident that the dream that the Pharaoh receives is set on the banks of the Nile. It's not just a nice bit of setting to put some cows in. The Nile is the heart of their economy. Apparently at the time it would regularly flood, and Egypt depended on those floods for its economy. It was at a point where any reduction in those floods would threaten not just the water, but the whole economy, the welfare of and the profits of the whole empire. So the Pharaoh's dreams are about the dangers of some sort of crisis that would affect the health and well-being of his people, that would affect the economy, and would affect the whole structure of society. Imagine that. What could this ancient text have to say to us today? He gathers his advisors. The translation that you will often see uses the word magicians, and that is actually just an English attempt at using a translation for an Egyptian word that doesn't have any other equivalents. It would actually be better to think of it as spiritual advisors or experts. The empire's spiritual advisors and experts are fake experts. They claim so much, they're in a mighty position, but they really don't know what they're talking about. Fake news, fake experts, fake advice. Imagine that. The empire doesn't get it. But then the cupbearer, remembers. The cupbearer remembers that he had been helped to understand a vision when he was in prison, that a young Hebrew had helped him. Imagine those sitting listening to these stories, reminding them of their own story, to hear that the mighty Egyptian empire needed a young Hebrew to help them. Quickly, Pharaoh calls for Joseph. Joseph is dressed as an Egyptian and he has his hair trimmed and his beard shaved. He spent 2 years in lockdown, unable to get a haircut. Imagine that. He then hears the Pharaoh's dreams. And as he hears the Pharaoh's dreams, he says 2 things. He says first that these dreams are from God, these visions are from God. And second, that any understanding of them also can only come from God. And then he says something interesting. He says that I can help. And he says, I can help give you the welfare that you desire. And the word he uses is really close to the Hebrew word for shalom, which means peace, but not just peace. It means a sense of wholeness and harmony and being at peace with the world and having good relationships and being able to be calm. And the Pharaoh doesn't have that, and he wants that. And Joseph is offering that because that is what his God is all about. That's what the plan, the dream, the vision has always been about. You see, Joseph is not the hero of this story. Very few of the characters, if any, in this story are heroes. The real hero of the story is the God who created, the God who offers to bring peace, shalom and wholeness, the God who wants to bring life in all its fullness, who wants to put his creation project back on track. Joseph tells the Pharaoh what the dreams mean. It's not actually that groundbreaking what it means. Years of plenty and years of famine happened every now and again in ancient times. So what's unique about what Joseph is saying isn't that there's going to be years of plenty and years of famine. And even when he then describes a plan to deal with it, that's not really news either. What is different is that this is a warning. This is an opportunity, knowing what's going to happen, that the Pharaoh can look after his people and his land. An opportunity to look after his people and his land, because he's been given this message, this truth. Joseph also advises that the Pharaoh find somebody to do this, to put the plan into action. The Pharaoh is not stupid. He knows that the kind of advice that is coming through Joseph shows that Joseph is exactly the man to put this into action. And Joseph's advice is entirely sensible. To save now so you can spend later. To conserve now and not exhaust all the resources of the empire for the times that you will need it. Imagine if this ancient story had anything to say to us today. Joseph is put in charge. Pharaoh puts Joseph in charge. Joseph becomes second in command in the Egyptian empire. Why? Because he is the most clever, because he is the most holy, because he deserves it? No, Pharaoh himself says, can we find such a man anywhere who has the Spirit of God in him? The Spirit of God in him. What Joseph has is just simply the knowledge that he knows who he is and who his God is and who he is made to be. He's not in charge to enjoy it. He's not in charge to get the blessings and the rewards of being second in command. He's in charge to take responsibility for the people in front of him, which is the simple truth of the dream, the plan, the vision, the creation project that this story tells us about. That God made a world for human beings to enjoy, and he made them to look after each other and the land. This is what I believe each one of us is made for, and Joseph knows that, and he ends up in the position where he can put that into practice. A young Hebrew man turns things upside down. Another young Hebrew man enjoyed turning things upside down, enjoyed poking fun at the promises and claims and the so-called experts of the empire. So much so that the emperor decided to get rid of him and to execute him and try and get rid of him and his movement. Another young Hebrew took bread as he sat at supper with his disciples, broke it, said, "This is my body broken for you. Remember."